Vice Chancellor, Professor Gurmeet Singh, and today's speaker, Dr. Fiona Murphy, the co-founder, Partnerships, Community Development, More Brains Cooperation from United Kingdom. Respected deans, heads of departments, research scholars, my dear students, particularly those students doing their course through distance mode. The Directorate of Distance Education was established in the year 1995 for offering postgraduate, undergraduate, and postgraduate diplomas and other need-based, market-driven, and skill-oriented courses. Now, Directorate of Distance Education is offering 8 undergraduate programs, 4 postgraduate programs, and 8 MBA programs, including MBA General, MBA Marketing, MBA Finance, MBA HRM, MBA in International Business, MBA in Tourism, MBA in Operation Supply Chain Management, MBA in Hospital Management. And that all these programs are approved by All India Council for Technical Education and Distance Education Bureau of UGC New Delhi. On the occasion of Silver Jubilee, the Director of Distance Education, Pondicherry University, is organizing a series of lectures from distinguished academicians, administrators, management gurus, and professionals and experts from India and abroad. Most of these lectures are arranged on Saturdays for the convenience of the distance student, but sometime on Fridays because of experts' preoccupation. So I request the distance education students and full-time students, research scholars, and faculty members to make the best use of international webinars organized by the Directorate of Distance Education, Pondicherry University. I will briefly introduce my Vice Chancellor to you, and then actually we'll move on to your introduction, of course. The Vice Chancellor, he is one of the international academicians, and he is a renowned academic administrator and internationally reputed expert in the field of corrosion science and smart materials. He has taken over the Vice Chancellor of Pondicherry University. After taking over the university, he has made actually a big change in the university in terms of research project, infrastructure, recruitment, and recent COVID pandemic management on the campus. And he's decorated academician. Professor Singh has received many awards, including Meritorious Contribution Award, the Annapurna Award, the Membership of Royal Society of Chemistry, London, the Fellowship of Society for Advanced Electrochemical Society and Technology, and the Electrochemical Society of India. Overall, and he is an excellent, kind-hearted human being with a big helping hand to all on the campus. I would like to request Honorable Vice Chancellor to give his inaugural address.
Thank you, Professor Bhaiya. I am delighted to be here amongst a lot of luminaries in the subject. And the topic being discussed is artificial intelligence, and as I said, the topic is artificial intelligence and the future of libraries and the use of books. Very important topic, I am sure, and I am very happy that Dr. Jason has joined in, and he will be with our members here and young staff members as well as our students. As I said, the topic is very important. Artificial intelligence in the days to come is assuming a lot of importance, and the use of books, the future is taking a different direction altogether, and we need to ponder over that what way we have to take our libraries, what shape do we have to give it, exactly how do we use our artificial intelligence in this. The computer scientists all over are busy doing these things, and I'm sure for all libraries also, it will be a very worthwhile exercise. There are a lot of participants here, and I have no doubt in my mind that Dr. Jason's lecture for all of you will be a very useful one. I am particularly keen, as always, on young research scholars who are here to participate in this, and they should take the right lessons from the speaker's lecture, because they are the ones who will be looking for good directions in their research work, and through such lectures, they are able to find one. And once the lecture is over, I would urge all our young staff and young researchers, young students to interact with the speaker to clarify their doubts and to take a direction in their research work and the future course of action. So I am very thankful to everybody that they have organized this seminar. Dr. Ramaya has taken a lead in this, and I'm sure this is going to be very useful for all the library science department as well as the library staff and all the faculty members present here. They have been organizing this in the past also, and everybody finds it very useful. I look forward to more such webinars in future as well. I'm thankful to Dr. Jason for sparing his time, and in future endeavors of ours, I'm sure he would be sparing and helping us in the best possible ways. Thank you very much, and I wish the webinar a grand success. All the best, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So first, actually, I would like to thank the first speaker before actually introducing the second one. The first speaker we had actually Dr. Fiona Murphy, who delivered the talk on open science, and it was really inspiring. And actually, a lot of actually discussion took place. Almost actually half of the time, the discussion went on, and the students and faculty members they participated. And
pardon me for my mention. I was busy in a meeting and I could not attend to the talk of Dr. Fiona. But nevertheless, I am sure this talk also would have been a very useful one for everybody.
Yes.
Because this is obvious from the fact that you said a lot of discussion took place. In a lecture of this kind, if there is a lot of discussion by the young mind, I'm sure they would have enjoyed the talk and would have been a very meaningful one for everybody. So, Dr. Fiona, we are very happy and thankful to you for sparing your time. And I'm sure your lecture will go a long way for the benefit of everybody. Had I been free from that meeting, I would have attended that talk as well. But I was a little too busy in that. So all the very best and thanks a lot for this. Please carry on, Professor Ramaya.
Yes, sir. Now, it is my privilege and honor to introduce Dr. Fiona Murphy. Fiona Murphy is More Brain Partnership and Community Development Expert with 20 years of experience in publishing and scholarly communication. Fiona has expertise in social sciences methods, community and business and practice of scholarly publishing. After completing a DPhil in English at Oxford University, Fiona began her publishing career with Wiley editorial committee coordinator, and then in London as senior commissioning editor at Bloomsbury Academic. Fiona returned to Wiley as a publisher in the Earth Sciences. In these roles, Fiona developed deep expertise in publishing operations across editorial, production, commissioning, market strategies, portfolio development, and many other areas. Importantly, Fiona's work as a publisher was transdisciplinary across the humanities and social, physical, and natural sciences. As a consultant, initially with Maverick Publishing Specialist, and later as the founder and director of Murphy Michel Consultancy, Fiona built a reputation as an expert in the use of data-driven decision-making and scholarly infrastructure. She worked with a wide range of organizations, including the Belmont Forum, Force 11, Sloan Foundation, Bodleian Library, and the Association of Commonwealth Universities, Joint Information Systems Committee, and Institute of Physics, creating understanding and driven alliances between the founder, the funders, researchers, institutions, and publishers. Dr. Fiona continues to be a leader in research infrastructure and particularly open data, including her role as a deputy chair of the DDE board, working closely with the executive director and other board members to define the DDE's future directions and strategy. She is a founder member of the STM Research Data Group, a member of the Research Data Alliance and the Force 11, and researcher to the Reader Advisory Board. With a holistic understanding of how things work, Fiona is the keen industry watcher with a sharp eye for the points of the intersection that others often miss. Thank you very much, Madam, for accepting our request and going to give an interesting talk on the open science. Now, I would like to request Dr. Fiona Murphy to deliver her talk on open science, one of the latest areas on which a lot of discussion is going on in scholarly publishing. Over to Dr. Fiona Murphy.
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Professor Amaya. I'm very pleased and honoured to have this opportunity to speak to you and your students, and to any faculty from the university who are able to attend today. So I hope what I have to say will be of interest and will spark some conversation and thoughts and questions from you, the audience. If you've got anything that you wish to ask, I hope that there's some time at the end. Right, so today we're going to take, I think, a high-level look at scholarly communications and the system, and at why various stakeholders participate in it. And then we'll start looking a bit more closely at open science and at the sort of options that are available for individuals and institutions to participate. And I will go. So what is scholarly communication? I mean, this is quite a well-known standard definition that captures the fact that it's not just about writing, it's not just about journal articles, but it's actually more about a wider range of outputs. It covers both formal, so that's sort of actually published and peer-reviewed, articles, books, chapters, and so forth, but there are also informal channels that are included. The examples given in the definition are electronic listservs, but we also say that things like blog posts and YouTube videos and possibly even social media interactions would also be included. Having said that, when people are talking about scholarly communications, they most universally are thinking about publishing. And that's also the implication for that is publishing, which is something that happens at the end of the research process. So after the research has been conducted and completed, and the results and the thinking, the findings and the method are all packaged up, perhaps in a journal article or in something longer, and then they're formally published, and the researchers move on to the next project. But as we'll see, this cycle, if you like, or process has been quite disrupted in recent years, and open science, open research have been some of the if you like, consequences or ways of trying to deal with and understand and work with it that have emerged. So these are probably the main participants in the scholarly communications system, if you like. We've got researchers, publishers, funders, and research institutions. So my aim now is just to give you an idea of why everybody participates, what they're hoping to get out from it, and then to look a bit further on as to what the disruptions have caused and how things are moving around. So first of all, researchers. If you like, researchers are the one constant in all research activities. There must be somebody doing the research. So they need and want to share their research results, and they need and want to advance their careers. And I've put the publish or perish mantra there, which has historically been something that's driven, I think, researchers to publish. You could say it's not necessarily in that order. For many people, if you like, sharing their research results might be something they're not particularly keen on doing, but they need to communicate them in order to be able to demonstrate their ability and also go back to their institution and their funders for further opportunities. Publishers are seeking to provide a service to the authors to enable them to publish their research, to be able to put it on a platform and for it to be able to be seen. They're also looking to disseminate research to the customers, to the users. And just to say, by the way, that For many publishers, their customers will be institutions, where the users might be the researchers or individuals. So there's a bit of a gap there sometimes. And ultimately, publishers need to be able to fund themselves, to make money. And that can be something which, if you like, is part of just what they need to do in order to be sustainable. And that might be true for, say, a university press or for a learned society. But obviously there are commercial publishers, and I'm sure you'll know the names of many of them, for whom ultimately that is the reason they exist. It's to make the money. They happen to be in publishing, and they will then consequently be doing the publishing to the most cost-effective, but also efficient and effective way possible. Funders obviously are funding the research. This is whether they're governmental, it could be foundations or charities, and they want to be able to evaluate the success of their programs, and one of the ways they can do that is to be able to look at what's been published as a result of the research that they've funded. In recent years, there's also been a great move, particularly among governmental funders, to be able to demonstrate value to the taxpayer, who, if you like, ultimately we are the funder of any national funding projects. And there's also an interest in funders. They have increasingly an interest in how their research is distributed and circulated, and they might join, I say, like Plan S, Coalition S, and seek for there to be open access for their published outputs. So again, they'll be looking to see and make sure that the researchers are conforming to any requirements. So research institutions basically are keen to understand and be able to track the activities of their researchers. They're looking to be able to demonstrate that, if you like, to their own stakeholders, which might be a national funding and evaluation exercise. We have the REF in the UK, for instance, and it might also be as a way of attracting new researchers or other partnerships as well. They will also be needing to provide access to their own users via subscriptions and loans when you've got the subscription copyright model, and also particularly large research intensive institutions such as Harvard will have their own mandates, their own requirements for the way that their researchers behave, and in view of how they deal with their research. They might have also an institutional repository, and be looking to sort of build that as a way of recording and taking advantage of their own research outputs. However, so that was the standard status quo, if you like, for much of the 20th century. But technology, especially the internet and recent developments in things like computing power, and also the globalizing of many research efforts, the huge upswell in the number of people and countries actually conducting research, means that there's a really big technology and scaling issue in terms of that model we were just looking at. And I really like this image which Alberto Pepe put out on his Twitter feed in 2012, and I'm not able to find it anywhere else, but I think it's really nice in the way that it shows that scientists, and by scientists I mean anybody that conducts research in scholarship, if you like, so that's anything in the humanities or the social sciences as well. They work in the 21st century with current tools and capabilities, but a lot of the time the systems that they're working with are very 20th century, and they're very kind of and then they package down, they flatten and squash research, and if you like, a lot of the time you'll have a lot of the very things that make the research itself rich. You've got data sets, so we've got videos, got links in and out to other projects and other people, are stripped out in order to package into a standard formal publication, and that not only makes things, if you like, a lot more boring, it actually makes them less useful as well, because you're less able to look at provenance, versioning, be able to track down what people did next, and they basically there's a problem. And the result has become a very roughly organized mess. And it's also brought with it, I think, increasing calls since about the 1990s for everything to be made openly available. If you like, a scholarly commons of knowledge that's potentially accessible by anyone who wishes to use it and who has an internet connection. Bearing in mind, until the internet itself existed, that this wasn't even theoretically possible. But now we are increasingly having, mass access, although sometimes with curbs and barriers, either technical or political, or so forth. There's still, great strides being made in this direction, and so the stakeholder rationales for participating themselves are becoming disrupted, are changing. So I've gone back and had a look at what who participates and why from the earlier slides. And for instance, where before I think it was very much researchers, like authors of papers or of books or book chapters, who participated in terms of who produced the research. It's now a much wider spectrum of people who could be included in the, if you like, the research effort, research production. That would be people who look after the data, either manage it or house it. You've got librarians, you've got teachers, people that write software, and also citizens. You've sort of citizen sciences, crowdsourcing, and again, so this is a much greater range of people who potentially both who need access, and that's both to see what's already there and also to provide their own contributions. Publishers are now not so much about the distribution or something, holding and distributing content either in print or online form, but they're increasingly trying to find new markets when thinking about building services on that content, and that might be around analytics or providing connections or how between different entities that are housed in different spaces. It might be training resources. People learn to navigate this new landscape. There could be collaboration spaces. There's quite a lot of moving, if you like, up the chain to what would have been seen as publishable outputs, thinking about methods, for instance, or even ideas. As well, so there's quite a lot of ingenuity going on there, partly because increasingly, the internet, people expect things to be free at the point of use, but somebody has to pay for something somewhere. So it's where you're trying to find that value that's been moving around. Funders, if you like, aren't so much disrupted. I think as perhaps becoming more discerning in their demands. Whereas before there was quite a general sense that they wanted to see lots of papers, perhaps, or lots of articles. They wanted to see some evidence of people having used their research to base publications on. They're much more interested now in being able to track more closely. That could be even individual careers of people that they have funded at an early point in their career, and then thinking, did we pick the right people? Do we have good track record for boosting someone early in their career to see what they then do? They want to see where their research goes in terms of other projects, perhaps funded by other funders. They want to be able to see reuse, perhaps, of data sets that they've already paid for once. They don't want to pay for somebody to generate that, a similar data set again. They want to be able to see that repurposing economy, if you like. And also, as I say, that the mandates, the requirements are continuing to become more sort of detailed and more searching. More and more, the funders are looking for, published data, for instance, as well as open access. And I think that kind of trajectory is going to continue. research institutions, a lot of ways have just seen an extension of their requirements as well. At the moment, we're still dealing with a mixed economy, if you like, where there are many subscription or pay to see, pay to view products and services. But there are also increasing amounts of open access programs, and often it's the institution that has to handle those. So again, there'll be sort of libraries or research offices that are managing funding budgets, and curating collections is shifting in emphasis from being about trying to get as much material and content for your researchers, your institution as possible, and becoming more about versioning services, and also providing remote access, which, as we know, has been particularly important in the last couple of years. And actually, even some research institutions, and in fact some funders, have themselves started providing more publishing services or publishing-like services. So say research institutions might have a repository that they're trying to build. They might even start a university press, and to think about how to support their researchers that way. So again, the internet and technology and changes in thinking and workflows and value have brought about all these changes in the way that the various players are acting. So, I'd say the terms publishing and scholarly communications could now basically be applied to pretty much anything that a researcher might do across their entire workflow. I think that which if you remember at the beginning, where I was saying that publishing, if you like, was thought of as something that happened at the end of the process, but now anything might be published either in real time or shortly after something's been done. It's like a data management plan could be published at the very beginning of a project, or it might be that you have to conduct all the research activities as though you're expecting to be publishing them at the end of the process. So it's very much if you like, a show your working requirement, if you like, to get maximum marks and to show, for people to be able to trust that you took the right method and you applied things correctly, and you made good decisions, and that your final conclusions are appropriate. The thing is that the complexity of research itself means that it's going to take extra work to across all these steps that you're opening up, to be able to make them understandable to others and also reproducible. And there's a strong argument, in fact, for doing this in terms of knowledge overall, because if I'm sure you can see it promotes integrity, and also will enable far more reusability in what is being produced, but it will take longer and it is harder to do. So I think there's a growing sense that that in order to produce proper open science, open research, it's going to take either extra time or extra money or more people, or at the very least further training, in order to be able to output good quality open research resources. And this is often very difficult because certainly in the standard way to learn how to be an accomplished researcher is to learn from your seniors, people with more experience than you. But the senior researchers themselves haven't done this before. They haven't been trained in these tasks. So again, there's a bit of a mismatch in terms of requirements and capabilities to deliver. And for many people as well, it's if we like sharing your results and your work is itself counterintuitive, as if you're relying for your own advancement on your competitive edge. It makes no sense at all to let your competitors see your work before you've had a chance to fully utilize it yourself. So so again, there are some contradictions there, or if you like, perverse incentives, which still need some work. And another example, I think, of potential problems is open peer review. Early career researchers are typically very worried about whether you're delivering a critical open peer review, perhaps to somebody more senior or someone eminent in their field, could have a catastrophic effect on their career prospects. And I think that's, if you like, almost an unseen consequence. It wasn't expected, but it is. I think it's a very real, and you can imagine, social issue. That like trying to increase involvement and provide greater transparency to the research process can itself be excluding of some of the participants if they just don't feel able to take that risk in participating. So as I say, there are some ongoing discussions going on. There are various initiatives about managing parameters for debate, having new ways of evaluating researcher performance, having new metrics and so forth. But these are all still ongoing. Nothing's entirely settled. So up to now, I've been, if you like, expanding on the issues and complexities around open science. So I want to start now to just bring it back down, if you like, make it a bit more manageable in terms of how it's expressed, and so we can start having a think about what's sort of practically sort of available to do. So this is a very useful taxonomy provided by the Foster Initiative, which was part of a European Union program. It's wound down in terms of the new work that it's been doing, but it's still actually running a very active website and training environment. So I would recommend having a look at the website. It's got a lot of materials and videos and things that it's very useful at looking at kind of various concepts and how-tos and the relationships between things. So as you can see there, the taxonomy, it does a lot of the thinking for you, I think, in terms of what does open science actually mean? What does it consist of? Where do things fit? Which things are my problem? But what can be opened up as well? Because again, people don't always have an instant sense of, things about policies, how do policies fit in, what's a data journal? All these things are, can be taken to a more granular level until there's something that you can actually, if you like, think there's I can define this, I can understand this, I can take this forward a bit. So taking it down a little bit further, I'd say that these are the most probably immediate, useful areas for researchers to bear in mind with respect to their own practice. By which I mean, I think it'd be useful and also manageable to develop an understanding of what these topics mean within your own subject and institutional context. And then if I agree with the rationale that kind of open science, open research is worth pursuing, or if you're under a mandate to comply, or if you want to say participate in a journal which conducts open peer review, that kind of thing, then hopefully you should be in a position where you can actually take action and be able to participate fully and contribute. So I'm also aware that this has been quite a whistle-stop tour already, and I want to have certain time for discussion. So I'm just going to go in a bit more detail into two of these, into open access and open data. So in terms of what can you do, open access is basically functionally it's an online only format, because if it's been printed, if you like, it's not open because the printed forms are limited. So the goal, it's got several different if you like categories, I suppose I would think of them as. I've put a few of them there, probably the main ones for you to perhaps be thinking about. So open access gold means that there's a Creative Commons license, and which means that the content itself is publicly available for reuse. And there are various fine nuances between different Creative Commons licenses, but generally it'll mean that whoever reads it then has the permission to reuse it, usually as long as they credit the original provider. Gold will also mean it's published open access. Ooh. Right, hopefully, if this is possible, I've just tried to be a little bit louder. Yeah, so it should be immediately open access, and forever, and also there's generally been some kind of fee paid, either by the individual that published it or their institution, or sometimes their funder. And then sort of similarly, the kind of perhaps usually journal that it will be published in will be either wholly an open access gold journal, so all the articles that it publishes have been published in this way, or it could be hybrid, which means that at least some of the material is subscription, certainly behind a paywall, but that this particular article has been made open and immediately open. And again, as I say, that so in this instance, the copyright has been made public. It's become part of the scholarly commons knowledge canon. Having said that, there's also green open access, and that's given to forms where there's usually, if you like, it's a step back from that. It'll either be that somebody has had to wait for a certain amount of time, perhaps 12 months is a typical amount of time before something could be opened up. It might be that there is a version of record that's in the journal and behind a paywall, but there could be either a submitted version or an accepted manuscript version sitting somewhere else, perhaps in either the author's repository or website or in an institutional repository. And again, that then means that the copyright for the version of record will be usually with the publisher. And then so that'll also mean that if people are going to cite or to use something from this paper, they're going to have to be very careful to make sure they don't contravene that. But at the same time, they should be able to access and read using the author's version, wherever that sits. That'll be free. Again, it can be really, really useful in terms of particularly finding if you're not if you don't have much money, if you're an unaffiliated researcher perhaps, or it's something that you're not sure if you need it and you don't want to have to pay for full access for something, it can be a good way of getting around some of those issues. Preprints have been becoming much more popular in recent years, and that's where an early version of an article, perhaps the first draft, could be put in a preprint repository. So Archive is perhaps the best well-known edition of this. It's been going for I think over 20 years, and it takes mathematics, physics, astronomy, and basically it's free to upload, it's free to use, and free to view, and it's often specifically done to get comments from the community. And then at some point, usually, the authors will sort of take the comments and basically draft a new version, and then that will be the one that gets submitted to a journal. And that's actually becoming an increasingly formalized process as well. A lot of journals now have formal links with, for instance, bioRxiv has a formal link with PLOS. So if you submit to an article to PLOS, they will actually, as part of their workflow, invite you to put a draft in bioRxiv, and I think it's also vice versa. So there's increasing understanding that actually having different versions and then showing the process and the comments perhaps that people posted, provides sort of useful feedback. Preprints are also, I think, very useful because they're immediate. I think one of the problems historically with, for instance, journal publishing has been backlogs, and so somebody could, submit something, and it might take a year to get it peer reviewed if it's if the journal's very overrun, or if it's if for some reason a contentious subject. But preprints go up immediately. And that means that if you like, you can then start pointing people to it if you're confident about your ideas, and also start getting the credit. And actually then it starts addressing some of those issues that people can have about conducting their research openly. So, as I said, there are certainly sometimes fees associated with open access, particularly with gold open access. If you want to, participate by making your say, if you want to send your article to the journal that's like the best one in your field, and you also want it to be open access, it's going to cost. And often those journals can be very, very expensive. I think Nature is what, like £5,000 or something ridiculous. Other journals, particularly those published say by Hindawi, are a lot more reasonable, but there'll still be a number of £100 dollars. And that can be still very prohibitive. And I think that's a real issue around who gets to participate in research. I think historically you could argue that there was a problem with participation. If you didn't have the funds, you couldn't read the research. But now it's flipped around, and now if you don't have the funds, you can't produce the research or get the research communicated potentially. At least not in all the same level of outlets of publishing journals that you might wish. So again, I think there are some issues around that. There are often waiver arrangements that can be made, but again, it's another barrier to entry. As I say, there are various licensing issues around whether you have a Creative Commons license for gold open access, but then if you then go back into the, if you like, the formal traditional journal workflow, you will end up having to sign over copyright at some point. And again, there are these disputes, or if you like, or pain points around the value, who gets to decide what about whose content, and I think a lot of these things are under a lot of pressure at the moment because of the disruption and the squeeze that, for instance, the publishers are under. I also wanted to make a point about having a reliable publishing outlet as well. As I'm sure you're aware, the very fact of open access, whereby the payment is coming from the author rather than from the institution that wants to read, has created an opportunity for bad faith players, and there are a lot of predatory journals out there, which I think are a particular nuisance to inexperienced or new researchers who perhaps are less aware of the kinds of checks that they can make, or if you like, what they should be expecting in terms of a service from their journals. So it is really, really important that if you are interacting with a journal and who's considering publishing with them, that you make some checks. Sorry, I can see the question. I'll take questions at the end. Things that you can do, you can look up the directory of open access journals, the DOAJ. There's an initiative called Think, Check, Submit, which you can also go through. And basically, there are, if you like, a good thing to do is just compare what a website looks like in comparison with websites that you know are reputable journals. And you'll see there'll be things like memberships of specific organizations like Crossref and DataSite, and you'll be able, there are things that you can do to make sure you don't get tripped up by these predatory outlets. But I would say that is a really important thing to remember. So thinking about open data, I think whereas for open access, the problem is, or the new disruption is around the way that you publish the thing you're already going to publish. So it might be an article or a book chapter. And it's if you like, the model or the way it gets paid for has changed. Traditionally, nobody cared about data at all. Nobody wanted it to go anywhere, and it just would sit either in people's laptops or on a disk, and ultimately get thrown away or forgotten about. But that's changed massively over the last few years, and so people are increasingly being perhaps mandated or at least encouraged to make their data available. Often at the point of publication of relevant articles, but also periodically, just at the point, just as a result of having done the research. So in terms of outlets, the two that I would suggest are the most viable are trusted repositories. So again, that might be someone at an institution, or it might be there are a lot of general repositories, or there are subject-specific repositories. And also there are emerging data journals, which themselves can take a certain amount. I think GigaScience is good for that. They have their own repository, and will look after data well. But I think what is perhaps too big an ask is to go into too much detail about what you could do with what kinds of data. But just to think, I mean, data for anyone, for any project, could be it's anything that you produce in the course of your research. It could be big files, small files. It could be images. You've got software. You've got models and model outputs. You've got searches even, and any of these could be important or less important for keeping in the longer term. I think in terms of thinking about the open research, if you like, a way of thinking about what is important to keep is what's needed to be able to show my working, to make my work eventually sort of reproducible, that someone could go through and understand the decisions that I made, and be able to potentially rework my experiments. But in the meantime, though, what I put up there, this is actually Tim Berners-Lee's, the guy that invented the internet. It's all his fault, and it's his 5-star data model. And I think as a result, it shows, if you like, the way that you could do something, and then you might be able to do it a bit better by going up a star. So making your stuff available on the web, stick a PDF somewhere, make it structured, have Excel, but then make it non-proprietary, CSV. Then have URLs. I would also say actually have a persistent identifier, ideally, which would be like a digital object identifier, or DOI, and then link it to other people to provide that context as well. So again, if you think about what is going to be most helpful in the future, and I think as well, what's also important to remember when you're at the in the earlier part of your career is this is something which people later on in their career really wish they'd done. So if you're at an earlier point in your professions and your research and so forth, this is an opportunity to do yourself a massive future favor, and to be able to build on your own legacy. But make a legacy, build on it, and be able to link back to it, because I'm sure you're aware, over time links break, things get lost, memories fade, people move institutions, and so the more you can do to document and publish, make available what you've done, the more it helps you more than anyone. So I also wanted to point to some other things that you, the individual, perhaps through your institution, can do in terms of finding out more, or learning more, or even or participating, if you like, providing your own opinion and work, because basically I think what's hopefully very clear is that this is still ongoing. This is an entirely a transition time, if you like. So I wanted to flag up these three initiatives. The Research Data Alliance. Any individual can join at no cost to be able to have access to all the documents that Research Data Alliance produces. So it's an international organisation, and it has a range of stakeholders. It has scholars, it has funders, not governmental organisations, publishers, other providers of interest to research data. And they get together and they try to improve things, if you like. It might be around software citation rules. It might be how to manage drone data, or there's quite a lot of work being done around wheat and crops generally, agriculture, social sciences. Funders are interested in things like national research data strategies as well. But so basically, any individual can, at no cost, join any of the groups and participate in the groups. The meetings, the plenaries come around every 6 months. They're being conducted online nowadays, and I think it costs $40–50 to attend and online. So again, the bar to entry is very, very low. I wanted to think about Force 11, which has been around actually the same sort of time as RDA, and that's very much a kind of organic group of people interested in research communication. Tends to have an emphasis on technology, on software, on workflows, and on things, making things very, very open as well. So they're going to be places where unpaywall happens. And again, it's completely free to join. You can be on mailing lists, you can be in working groups. Again, they have an annual conference, and I'm actually not sure if the next one's going to be online or hybrid. But again, they're very interested in global accessibility and solving the problems that people have, if you like. Their summer school, so Force 11 Summer School, is called FISCI, Force 11 Scholarly Communications Institute. And that's actually just opened its registration for this summer. So every summer it runs for a week or two. It's online only nowadays, and basically it's a place that you can learn about fair data, open access, new metrics, negotiating skills, and basically have all sorts of discussions with other people. Again, the summer school, there are actually a lot of bursaries, so particularly early career researchers are very often able to take advantage of that for free. And it runs sort of multiple editions of each session, so to make sure that wherever you are in the world, you're awake for the entirety of your course, which I think is also really important. So again, those are places that you can go to find things. So and I just wanted to say, so hopefully that's all made sense in terms of an overall picture. I hope I also haven't just depressed people too much. The landscape is very disrupted, but I think that also provides a lot of opportunities for people to be innovative, to think about new sort of technology solutions, and to become involved. So there are obstacles, there are barriers. We've talked about a lot of them. I mean, people are also trying to address them. So again, that there are opportunities to speak and to contribute to the way that things are developing. So more choices, as I say, whereas you had to be, if you like, a bench scientist or frontline, historian, or you had to be identified as a wholly a researcher to contribute to research. Now there are increasing research-oriented careers opening up. You can be like a data steward or a research software engineer. and so forth. But also, I think the earlier you are in the career as well, the more, I think, opportunity and probably more capacity you have to make a difference and to be able to ride this wave, if you like, to somewhere more more positive and hopefully, you know, more useful for everybody. So that's the end of the talk, and I'm aware that there have been some questions, so I will open up the chat and have a look at those now. Right. So please, people, do put your questions down. Professor Amaya, should I just go through the ones that are in the chat so far?
Now we'll open for the questions, of course, one by one. If they ask, of course, you can go through. If any questions left over in the chat box, that also we can address. Students, one by one, you can ask the questions. Then, Madam, she will be able to address those. And once the questions are over, whatever you mentioned in the chat box, we will address those also.
Sorry, do you want me to start with the ones in the chat box or finish with them?
Yeah, please go on.
Okay,
please.
sorry. Right, so someone has asked, what is a good quality of researchers? So is this the qualities that I'd want to or expect to see from a researcher? Yeah. Well, I think the thing is that researchers are you know, self-selecting, you know, intelligent, driven people who are curious and you know, want to ask questions and to keep going at problems and to find solutions. So I think that the competitive life of a researcher can be just very difficult for a lot of people to manage. It can be a bit cutthroat. And I think it can therefore start to reduce some of those positive qualities that people might start with. So I think the first thing I would hope for a researcher is that they can remember why they began their career in research and be able to kind of keep that curiosity and sort of open-mindedness and desire to know and to collaborate as part of their practice. I really want to generally see, if you like, collaborative, reciprocal behaviour be rewarded in the system. That is starting to happen because that is ultimately, I think, what will improve research overall. So I think that is what I think. It's difficult, but I think that is what can happen if you can keep that large-heartedness and help other people. That ultimately that will provide, you know, that will be rewarding, if you like, hopefully in the longer term. So I think the same person's asked, what are the duties of researchers? And I think that's really interesting. I think the responsibilities of researchers have been, that's possibly the thing that has been on discussion more than anything else for researchers, and you still do research. What is your duty to your colleagues or the research that you did in the past as well? I think people would invariably finish a project and go and just think about the next thing before. And as I think nowadays there's increasingly a sense that you have continued responsibility for what you did in the past, and it might be people need to be able to contact you to ask questions about your data, or you need to be able to yeah, I suppose justify to funders why you need new money to do something that's quite similar. So again, I think that the duties to your own research and your own legacy are becoming more developed. Other duties. Yeah, I think just integrity generally. I think integrity of behaviour, as far as possible. Oh, sorry, that was quite loud. So somebody has asked about peer review. I wonder if that means they want to know about open peer review. So, so blind peer review. So say single blind peer review, which is the version that I'm most familiar with, is where somebody is contacted to review an article. Usually several people will be contacted by the editor of a journal, and they will know who the author of the paper is, which is the single blind. Double blind is where they don't know who the author of the paper is, but the author of the paper doesn't know who the reviewers are. The reviewer will prepare, a response. They might be given, asked to respond to some specific questions by the editor about the contribution to the subject, whether the methods are right, whether the data are correct, or whether everything's there, whether they recommend it for publication if there are problems with the language, that kind of thing. And they'll send in a recommendation for accept, or perhaps minor changes or major changes or reject, and so forth. And then the editor will convey the decision. And if, as I say, if it's the single blind version, the reviewer knows what they said about the author's article. The author does not know who provided the opinions. With open peer review, again, there are a couple of different versions of that. There can be, if you like, where that process is run, but it is then run with everybody knowing who everybody else is. So the author will know that who the reviewers are, but it is still all kept within the confidentiality of the review process, if you like, of the publishing process. It's not generally known. It's been known by the people who actually do it. A more open version will be where the actual reviews might even be published, and the names of the reviewers are given on the website. So again, it's not only that everybody knows who everybody else is within the actual publishing process, but also the world knows, and the world can see exactly who said what, and they'll be able to also see if, so for instance, if it's an article that there was an initial version, and then there are open reviews, and then there's a final version, they will also be able to see what the author did in response to the peer review. So and I think that's where people, particularly early on in their careers, can feel very concerned, because, if you like, that becomes a part of their permanent scholastic record. And if they inadvertently or knowingly provide something very critical to somebody who has a lot of influence in their field, they may well feel concerned that that's going to have a bad effect on their long-term career. So I think those were the questions that were in the chat. I can see people are still putting questions in, but is there anybody that wants to actually ask me a question with their voice, if you like?
Students, you have any questions one-to-one, or you want to send it by chat box?
Good evening, madam.
Yeah, please go on.
Madam, I had a doubt on what are the challenges that a researcher might face if the data is not available free of cost in the public domain. Suppose the researcher wants to do the research in this field of study where the data is not available free of cost, and suppose it is a intellectual property. So how to access the intrinsic value of the data? So what all might be the challenges you might face?
Yeah. You're talking about the data, or an article, or anything?
Basically, the information that has been patented or
patented, you're talking about?
or the intellectual property, something that is not free of cost.
Something that's not free. Okay, so I think that obviously this can be a real issue. I think there are often ways to get to the information if you're prepared to take a bit of trouble if it's something that's very important for you. Data, for instance, even if it's not perhaps immediately openly available, a lot of repositories or data centers will provide access to registered users. So it can be as simple as simply becoming, making sure you're kind of a known and trusted user. Like a lot of the, say, NIH data repositories will, once they've if like verified you, will give you access to things. In terms of if you like, articles, other information that are behind subscription walls, there are various things like unpaywall, which if you log on to that, it tries to provide some sort of direction, switchboard, if you like, to give you an idea of what's the best version that you can see of something. So it might be you don't have access to the main article in a journal, but you can potentially access something in an institutional repository, and it might be the accepted version. Personally, I've been on both sides of this. You could try emailing the corresponding author. That can be effective. Sometimes looking in something like Zenodo, a lot of people increasingly are putting versions in Zenodo. ResearchGate and other scholarly communication networks can be very useful for pointing you to versions of things that are not behind a paywall. As an ex-publisher, I absolutely would never suggest to anybody that they should contravene copyright. I really wouldn't. But there are all of these things are quite reasonable to do, if you like. Again, sometimes even with authors, they will quite often have tokens, if you like, where they can actually send you a token and you can view it online, and it's part of their package for having provided an article. Let's see what else. Yeah, if it's a scholarly society, they will quite often be synthetic as well. If it's a scholarly society owned publication, or they're actually the publisher, their core mission is to advance their area. So they may do something as a one-off. So I think those are hopefully that's a reasonable set of things to start with. Who's next?
Next, please. Any more questions? Pranav?
Ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
please
hello.
go on.
Can you listen me?
Yes.
Yeah, go on.
I can hear you. I can't see you, I think.
Ma'am, what is the difference between the descriptive research and dynamic research?
Descriptive research and dynamic research.
Ma'am?
Was that the
Yeah.
question, the difference between them?
Yeah.
Do you mean in terms of the outputs?
What is the duty? Hello?
Hello?
Can you listen me?
I can hear you. I can hear you. But yes. Are you asking what the difference is between dynamic and descriptive
Yeah, the
articles?
difference. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what I would think of is that the traditional, as we were saying, way of describing your research was something that fitted into a paper journal. so it's pretty much just something that can be printed, that's got perhaps tables of the data, and images and figures, and then written words. Whereas something that's executable, potentially dynamic, would be something which is searchable, where perhaps you have a data set and then you have a tool to be able to visualize what the data look like. And then you've got and perhaps figures that you can download separately and manipulate, and where you can click into things like the citations. Perhaps you go forward and back in terms of looking at going straight to the citations list that this article has got, and then also seeing what articles subsequently cited it. And going into, perhaps the authors have got ORCIDs or links, and you can go into what they are, what they're doing now, or other things like that. So you can interact with the article directly. Hopefully, as well, there will then be dynamic links to perhaps subsequent versions. So if there are any kind of corrections or updates, or or other relevant articles, you can see those. And then perhaps there will also be connections with things like open peer review, and a link to and a link or other information about how to access full data or source code. So again, it's trying to just enrich what the final kind of user is. What it become not a reader but a user, and also enables you to search the article for the thing that you want or need. And it might be that you only want one of the figures or the data, or it may be that you actually need the methods, but you're able again to kind of hone down onto that, and hopefully reuse as easily as possible. So who's next?
Pranav, are you clear?
Now, what is the duties of the researchers?
Are you?
I thought someone had already asked. I thought I'd already answered that one.
Already asked, actually replied also. Why you're asking the same question? Yeah, please go on. Hello.
The
Hello.
researchers.
Hello, who's next?
Hello. Jacob Anthony, any question?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. Hello. Any more questions?
I think there's a bit more in the chat.
There's one question actually. What are the frameworks of open data?
Ooh. And what's the context of that? I can think of different ways of expressing that.
It says what are the frameworks?
I mean, ultimately, the benefits of open research practices, or the hoped for benefits, as we've said, are that things become, if you like, it increases transparency and integrity. Well, I didn't go into it's not fun, is it, in any detail, but you'll hopefully be aware that there have been various scandals in recent years. There've been a lot of paper retractions, and potentially previously eminent academics who've had their reputations ruined when it's turned out that they, for instance, just made up their data, and no one was able to check, because if you like, it was behind, it was in a black box, in a way of speaking. So the hoped for benefits are that they include making research more trustworthy, keeping us honest, and also making other people able to see how those things were arrived at. But also, I think there is a hope that by expanding what is available in terms of information about research, it will improve practice generally. As people learn how to do open research, and people will be able to become more collaborative, and tools will be developed to support that. And in fact, you could say, well, hopefully in the end, new questions can be asked because of the more rich seam of knowledge that we'll be able to ask the questions of.
There is a question, madam. What article is preferred more by editor of journal, concept based or empirical based?
Okay, I'm going to say it depends on the journal, and depends on the editor. I think sometimes it's just worth just writing to a particular editor and asking what they're interested in and what they want to hear. Certainly, from my time as a publisher, I think the things that we very much wanted were things that were people, we could have had something at the end, and again, it was something that other people could potentially use or benefit from, rather than something which, if you didn't want just a case study, you wanted the implications and potential translational benefits or consequences of what you found out, and given more kind of general context, for instance. And I think that there's also stuff around what's more kind of cutting edge. So I suppose that might be more concept based. But again, around the open access, open science argument, there's also increasingly a move around publishing sound science as opposed to exciting science, if you want. And that's around the fact that one of the problems with having things like really prestigious journals like Nature, which publish only a tiny percentage of what they get sent, is that they then disproportionately publish things that are actually not typical or not representative of a field. And they give them disproportionate sort of weight in terms of how they are thought of in that field. And then that in turn encourages people to try and sort of work their results, work the way they do things in order to get the surprising results. And I think there's increasing recognition that actually what we need is something that's more representative research findings, and that might mean that particularly with a lot of open access journals and so forth, that it's worthwhile publishing things that don't surprise you, but just as if you like, to show an instance of, this is what we expected to find and we found it, which actually increases the balance of emphasis that we need to put on this particular area and this particular finding. If you like, almost like systematic reviews, becoming more the kind of thing that people are taking interest in. Because I mean, as I say, that it can, having this thing happen in Nature, if you like, it pushes people to the boundary of what is ethical. And sometimes people go beyond that, they're chasing that fame, if you like, and then it becomes difficult to know when you're overstepping that bound.
Yeah, please.
Madam, good evening, madam.
Good evening.
We are trying to publish one research paper in the Scopus journal, madam.
Mm-hmm.
The journal name specially says Ugudimas Multidisciplinary Journal.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, we are seen in the Scopus page. It is visible, and also source homepage also available. last Monday we are again see in the Scopus page the source home page removed by the Scopus team, madam. In India, Scopus paper publication is must. It is mandatory by the UGC.
Yeah.
How we can approach this type of activities, madam, and also which was removed by the Scopus team. The particular source home page are cloned one. How we are aware about this type of fraudulent activities, madam? Please help me.
So you submitted your article to the journal, and it was showing up on Scopus as having been published, but then it got taken down again. Is that right? I'm not 100% certain what who did what in that instance. I think it might be a bit difficult to unpack it now, but I'm putting a website into the chat, and it's for COPE, and that's the Committee on Publishing Ethics, and they've got basically it if you like answers quite a few of the questions that that people might well have around what are the duties of the editor and of the journal and the publisher and the author in terms of what they write and what they produce and how they deal with each other. And it has flowcharts and things. So I think you may well be able to find what your situation on that flowchart. If you do, it will tell you what to do. I would say, I think probably pretty much all journal. I mean, when you say Scopus journal, do you mean published by Elsevier, or do you mean it's indexed by Scopus? So
But
do you know
many of the Scopus journals are not replying within a month or 2 months. It will take much more time. I think nearly more than 6 months they are replying our first review comments given to the author. It is so very difficult to complete the research work on time. Especially in India, UGC mandated to publish at least two paper in Scopus journals, but most of the standardized Scopus journals are not accepting and replying on particular time or right time. It is very difficult to doing research in India, madam.
Okay. And you've tried to talk to the editor, and it's taking a long time. I think, again, it's possible that you could try and talk to whoever it is that's managing the peer review. If it might not be the editor, but let's have a think. Yeah. I think you're going to have to just try COPE, and then if you're able to go back to the editor and quote what COPE says they should do, and again explain about the problem with the timing. I know that a lot of editors are very sympathetic for early career researchers who are under that kind of pressure, so it might be worth trying again, or get somebody who's sort of senior from your department to try.
Now, as a token of appreciation from the university side, we will be actually sending you a memento to your address, and please accept that. We'll be sending this Mondays by post your address. So this is the practice which we are following for the past actually few months, and this is the seminar from the DDE and Pondicherry University. Thank you very much once again for sparing your time and actually delivering a very wonderful talk, which actually all the students and faculty members enjoyed. Thank you very much, madam.